You are 16, standing beside a fire, when a familiar face suddenly looks different. This person grew up beside you, shared food with you, and slept under the same hides. There are no surnames, family trees, or DNA tests. So how do you know this is someone you should never choose as a mate? A wrong choice could concentrate hidden harmful mutations in your children. Yet your ancestors did not need to understand genes to reduce that danger. Their solution was not one rule. It was several overlapping systems: instinctive kin recognition, childhood familiarity, group memory, social taboos, and contact with outsiders. Close relatives carry more of the same rare gene variants. When two copies of a harmful recessive variant meet in a child, the risk of illness, poor development, or reduced fertility can rise. Ancient people could not see DNA, but natural selection could still favor behaviors that made close-kin reproduction less likely. Evolution does not require an explanation. Your body pulls away from spoiled food long before you understand bacteria. In the same way, the human mind may use simple social clues to estimate who is probably close family, then attach feelings of attachment, protection, or sexual disinterest to that estimate. A Nature study, led by Deborah Lieberman, examined how modern humans recognize siblings. It found evidence for two especially important cues: seeing a baby closely associated with your mother, and spending many years living with someone during childhood. Neither cue reads genes, both use ordinary family life. Imagine you are an older child watching your mother carry, feed, and protect a newborn. That repeated association is a powerful clue that the baby is your sibling. You do not need to calculate shared ancestry. Your brain stores a social pattern. This child belongs inside the family circle. Now imagine the sibling is older than you. You could not watch their birth, so another clue matters more: how long you grew up together. Years of eating, playing, arguing, and sleeping nearby can create a sibling-like familiarity that dampens later sexual interest. Researchers call this kind of idea the Westermarck effect. This modern research cannot prove exactly what every Paleolithic person felt. Ancient minds left no written diaries. But the cues in the study would have been available in prehistoric camps, where children saw who cared for babies and spent much of early life among a small set of familiar people. The camp itself also worked like a living family record. Elders remembered births. Adults knew which children belonged to which mothers, fathers, siblings, aunts, and cousins. Stories, kin terms, teasing, warnings, and daily routines could preserve relationships without a written genealogy. In a small community, privacy was limited. Everyone noticed who shared a hearth, who carried a child, who returned from another band, and who called an elder by a family term. A young person might forget a distant connection, but the group did not depend on one person's memory alone. That redundancy mattered because childhood familiarity was imperfect. Ancient children were often cared for by several adults, and unrelated children could grow up together. A familiar campmate might feel like a sibling without being one, while a real relative raised elsewhere might feel like a stranger. Biology needed help from culture. As children reached adolescence, communities could separate ordinary family affection from possible courtship. Close companions raised together were already categorized as family. Potential partners were more likely to appear among visitors, neighboring bands, seasonal gatherings, or people who joined the camp from somewhere else. One practical solution was exogamy, choosing a partner outside the immediate local group. The word simply means marrying or mating outward. It does not require a formal wedding ceremony. It only requires social habits that move at least some young adults between communities. Movement was already part of hunter-gatherer life. Bands split when food was scarce, reunited when resources were abundant, visited allies, exchanged materials, and met at rivers, migration routes, or seasonal hunting grounds. Every reunion expanded the pool of people who were familiar enough to trust but not raised as siblings. A science study of present-day hunter-gatherer societies found that residential groups often include many unrelated adults and links to several families, not just one tight clan. These societies are not fossils of the Stone Age, but they show how flexible residents can create wide social networks without cities or written records. Ancient DNA offers a more direct clue. At Sunghir in Russia, researchers studied genomes from people buried about 34,000 years ago. Although the burials placed individuals together, the tested people were not close biological relatives. Their genomes also lacked the strong signature expected from repeated close inbreeding. The Sunghir study, published in Science by Martin Sikor and colleagues, suggested that very small local groups were embedded in wider mating networks. People may have exchanged partners between bands and used cultural rules to keep track of who was too closely connected. The grave goods at Sunghir were spectacular: beads, ornaments, and carefully made objects. They cannot tell us the exact marriage rules, but such shared styles may have helped people recognize group identity, alliances, or distant connections across a landscape where meeting the right outsiders mattered. Sunghir is only one place, and a burial is not a census. We cannot turn for genomes into a universal law for all ancient humans. Still, the site shows that a small Ice Age community did not have to reproduce only within itself. Social reach could be much larger than camp size. Neanderthal DNA adds another piece. In 2022, Lorit Skov and colleagues analyzed 13 Neanderthals from Chagirsky and Okladnikov caves in Siberia. They identified close relatives, including a father and daughter, and found evidence that these Neanderthals lived in a small community. The researchers also found much greater diversity in maternally inherited mitochondrial DNA than in Y chromosomes. Their best explanation was female-biased migration. Women were more likely than men to move between communities. That movement would have connected small groups and introduced less related partners. That the Chagirskaya genomes also contained long stretches of matching DNA, called homozygosity, consistent with a small and isolated population. This is crucial. Ancient safeguards were not perfect. Geography, low population density, conflict, or simple bad luck could still leave a group with few choices. So ancient humans did sometimes reproduce with relatives. There was no magical instinct that always identified every cousin, and no universal law followed by every community. The real story is risk reduction. Several imperfect filters work together, and when one failed, another might still help. Those cultural rules probably vary enormously. One society might forbid unions between people sharing a known grandparent. Another might divide everyone into named kin categories. Another might arrange exchanges between allied bands. Archaeology rarely preserves the spoken rules, so researchers must separate evidence from reasonable reconstruction. Social enforcement did not need courts. A warning from an elder, ridicule from peers, refusal by another family, or simply sending young adults to visit allies could redirect a relationship. In a camp where survival depended on cooperation, losing trust was a serious cost. Choosing outsiders also brought benefits beyond healthier children. A partner from another group could bring new roots, new tool-making knowledge, new food information, and relatives who might help during famine. Reproduction became part of alliance building, turning biology into a network of mutual support. That may be the counterintuitive answer. Avoiding close relatives did not only protect genes. It encouraged humans to build relationships beyond the people beside their own fire. The need to find trusted outsiders may have helped make human social worlds unusually wide. Picture a seasonal gathering. Several bands arrive with different ornaments, accents, and hunting stories. Elders greet people they met years earlier. Children meet distant cousins. Young adults notice unfamiliar faces. Before anyone chooses a partner, dozens of quiet checks are already happening through memory, behavior, and conversation. No one asks for a DNA sample. Someone remembers that two grandmothers were sisters. Another points out that a visitor comes from an allied band with no close connection. A young person feels no attraction toward the companion raised beside them, but curiosity toward someone new. The system works without anyone seeing the system. Modern life added surnames, written records, marriage laws, and genetic testing. But beneath those inventions, your brain still pays attention to childhood familiarity, maternal association, family labels, and social approval. The ancient solution is still operating inside modern relationships. So how did ancient humans know not to reproduce with family? They did not know in the scientific sense. They felt, remembered, watched, moved, and followed social rules. Their protection came from many small clues woven together across childhood and across the landscape. Back beside the fire, the familiar face is no longer a mystery. This person belongs to the inner circle that raised you. Beyond the flames, visitors are arriving from another valley. Your ancestors survived not because they understood genetics, but because family memory taught them where family ended. If you enjoyed this journey into the distant past, subscribe for more stories about ancient humans and human evolution.